Night on Guard by Ludwig Bemelmans. The flu epidemic has cost many lives, and it is to keep the men that work here well that we are charged from one duty to another. Yesterday, the red-haired Irishman and I were working in the post hospital, carrying the dead men down to the cellar on stretchers. We wear long white nurses' gowns and a cap, also a pad over mouth and nose, and look like ghosts. The cellar stairs turn and are very steep. The Irishman was in front of me, walking ahead down. When the dead man slipped and his feet went into the Irishman's back, and he said, "Sit down or I knock you down!" This kept me from screaming or dropping the body. Down in the cellar is a room, and in this we have brought the corpses. The Irishman takes the feet when we lift them off. I take them by the hair, as I do not wish to touch their faces or neck, which is stupid of me, but the hair is better, it is not so dead. The post-undertaker now has a lot of work. He has the assistance of several undertakers from Buffalo. I wonder if he has a girl. There are not enough men to mount guard. The posts are reduced, and although I am a corporal, I must stand guard. The third night I am down in the cellar again, now as a night guard. The dead must be watched. There is a regulation to this effect. They cannot be left alone. The cellar is dark and lit by a loose gas flame. This flame is on the outside of the room where the dead are. They lie in rows, and no one has had time to close their eyes. In the white of those eyes dances the reflection of the gaslight. I sit close to the wall as I could squeeze myself, and I am terribly afraid, so afraid that I have taken my gun out of its holster and pointed at the dead men. The safety catches off, and it makes me feel safe. If any one of them will move, I'm afraid I'll kill him. I don't see why they cannot be left alone or locked up overnight, or why there aren't at least two of us. The epidemic is much better and almost over now. I have an altogether new duty. I am stationed at the guardhouse, and I see that the men who have been on leave report for inspection before turning in. They come in at all hours of the night. Some of them have late passes, which I have to collect as well. After all the soldiers are inspected and have gone to bed, when everybody except a few men out on post are asleep, I have time to myself. After the reports are in order, I read mostly Voltaire, Goethe, and a little book of Schiller's poems, and on Napoleon. Later I go out. The air is so cold that it bites inside the nose, and when I come back I am much thinner. It is also difficult to walk because the roads are icy, and at times I must quickly slide to a tree, or a wind would take me along across the frozen parade ground. The clouds race past the moon. There are more stars than I have ever seen in America. In the metallic light, the roofs of the hospital buildings seem to float in the air in one flat green silver row of tiled panels. Under them, the hospital is quiet most of the time. At times, there is a scream from the bad section, and then the figure of a nurse passes the lit window pane. But that happens not very often. Around the fort is water, lit as the roofs are. In this scene is a dangerous ecstasy, an elation which begins as the fear does. It swells up in back of me, high and wide, and as if I were standing in front of an orchestra with rows of instruments wildly playing. In this excitement, many doors open to walk out of the house of reason. The mind becomes acutely clear. This goes through the body as if the brain, the fingertips, all surfaces were sandpapered, and the nerves laid bare to every sensation. The mind was a little cup, and now it is as big as a tub. This happens every night. First of all, I feel years older, and whatever I think seems crystal clear. Also, I seem able to do anything. I have had this feeling mildly before when coming out of a motion picture in which the acrobatic hero has swung himself on a curtain up the side of a tower and jumped on horseback across the parapets. For half an hour afterward, I have felt like doing the most difficult things in play, to jump to take hold of anything and swing myself up to the next electric sign on Broadway, to successfully punch anybody in the nose that seemed not worth liking. Now that the islands of security are where I know I can reach them, there is the constant wish to walk out farther on the thin plank of reason, to gamble with the chance of not being able to come back. The highest joy, and it is always a boundless happiness, is when the sun rises. It remains resting on the horizon for a long while, and then frees itself, floats freely. I feel then a sense of the miraculous logic and divine bookkeeping that makes all things in this world a day older. Myself, my mother, the sawmill, the patients, the dead grass under the snow, the trees, and for all these things wells up a rich affection, so that I must put my arms around a tree and feel its being. I also feel the sun, where it has been, with unbelievable detail, the shadows it has thrown past the church in Klobenstein, on the Christuses, on Uncle Joseph, who is out with his dog, on the ventilators of the ships and on the ocean, and here now on the snow past this tree. Shortly before the sunrise, there is a blue light all over, somewhat like in a theater, where they change the light from night to morning too fast, unreal, humid and inky, and spattered with yellow street lamps. When you squint your eyes, the street lights rain gold over the scene. In this light, a milk wagon horse clops up the street, and a man who has to go to work early comes out of the house, always in the same fashion. He yawns, closes his collar, and lets a small dog out after him. He walks down the steps and sees me and lifts his hand in greeting, and then, and always in this same order, bends down to speak to his dog. The ill-formed, unkempt, many kinds of dog makes a creaky sound and scratches. It is beside himself with gratitude. He shows this with all his might, wiggling so that one moment his head looks at his tail on the right side of his body, and then on the left. It is his daily morning prayer to his master and for himself to show how glad he is to be alive and how grateful to be a dog. Then the sun rises. It places light on ice-covered branches and on a young oak leaf that has stuck through wind and winter. It is curled like the webbed claw of a bird and becomes liquid and gilded. Then the prisoners arrive. They go from the guardhouse to the mess hall to get food. They are dressed in the wonderful fatigue suit, blue with lovely large prison P, hand-printed on the back. And they have the foolish fatigue hat. Fatigue is so right for this. They also show their prisoness in their walk. Behind them goes the guard. They all hurry off to get into the warm kitchen to warm their hands. I always follow them and love their walk, their faces, their words. Hat, coat, tray, all speak. They say, "We are prisoners, not bad fellows. We only drunk too much or fought, and it's nice in the jail. But hurry up, kitchen, so we can get a little coffee and sit by the oven." The guard is much less eloquent. In the kitchen, they look around to swipe something from the cook. They get an extra cup of coffee here. The cook is a thin, low-class Englishman with the lovely London dialect. He is simple-minded, and in all simple-minded people is a securing, restful quality. When he looks in a pot, I can read on his face whether it is clean or dirty inside. There are some specialists who have a right, or just a claim of their own invention, to a cup of coffee here early. Their faces appear on the side of the door, and they look at the cook and find out whether he is in the right mood, if he will give it to them. In all this, the appearance of a horse, the little dog, the prisoners, and the cook is wonder without end. In them also are the strongest weapons against the illness of the mind, against even just a low mood. There is an ever-present quiet humor. One must only sit and listen carefully and look for it. But of course, I think one must have been very ill to be so grateful. I am no longer afraid. After breakfast, I go over to the guardhouse to sleep. If the danger comes, it is now controlled. Physically, it is the same, quickly changing the temperature, fast pulse and the respiration, cold sweat and bitter running of water down the inside of the cheeks. but mentally it is much better. It is now about the same sensation I have when looking into a shop window of artificial limbs, or when seeing an ugly child weep somewhere alone. And we will pause there.